I remember the dust choking my throat as the stagecoach rattled into Dusty Hollow, the sun beating down like a blacksmith's hammer on an anvil. My heart was already pounding from the long, bone-jarring ride across the Badlands. But nothing could have prepared me for the hell that broke loose the moment we hit the town square. Gunfire erupted like thunder from a clear sky, sharp cracks that split the air, followed by screams and the whinny of panicked horses. Outlaws, masked and wild-eyed, were storming the bank across the way, their revolvers blazing as they cut down anyone foolish enough to stand in their path. I didn't think, I just acted. Grabbing my valise with one hand and hitching up my faded green dress with the other, I leaped from the coach's step, my boots hitting the dirt just as a bullet whizzed past my ear, splintering the wood behind me. The driver yelled something, maybe a warning, maybe a curse, but I was already running, dodging through the chaos, my eyes scanning the scattering crowd for the face I'd etched into my memory from a grainy tintype. Jedediah Thorne, my promised husband, the man who'd written those letters that pulled me out of the shadows of Kansas City like a lifeline. There he was, hunkered behind an overturned barrel, his rifle barking back at the raiders, tall, stern-faced, with a mustache like barbed wire and eyes cold as a winter creek. I shouted over the din, my voice raw and desperate. He turned, surprise flickering across his features as he reloaded, but before he could respond, one of the outlaws, a burly brute with a scar twisting his lip, spotted me and swung his gun my way. Time slowed. I could feel the heat of the barrel's gaze, the promise of death in that black maw. A shot rang out, not from the outlaw, but from somewhere to my left. The brute jerked, blood blooming on his shirt, and he toppled like a felled tree. I whipped around to see a stranger lowering his smoking Colt, his broad shoulders set like a mountain against the swirling dust. But there was no time to thank him. The fight was still raging, bullets pinging off wagons and storefronts. I scrambled toward Jedediah, my valise thumping against my thigh, heart slamming in my chest like a trapped bird. When the gunfire finally petered out, the outlaws fleeing on stolen horses, leaving bodies and blood in their wake, the square fell into a stunned hush. Folks emerged from hiding, women clutching children, men holstering weapons with trembling hands. Jedediah stood, brushing dirt from his vest, his gaze locking on me again. You're Lily Harper." His voice was gravelly, laced with suspicion, booming louder than necessary in the sudden quiet. I nodded, trying to steady my breath, the adrenaline still buzzing through my veins like whiskey fire. "Yes, sir, your bride-to-be." The words felt foolish now, amid the smoke and ruin, but I'd come all this way on faith and ink-stained promises. The crowd shifted, eyes turning our way, curious at first, then narrowing as whispers started. I could feel them, those judgmental stares, like needles pricking my skin. Jedediah's face hardened, his jaw clenching tight enough to crack walnuts. He glanced at the letter I'd pulled from my valise, the one he'd sent, creased and worn from countless readings. "You wrote about wanting a partner, someone strong to build a life with," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I told you everything about the saloon, about doing what I had to survive. You said it didn't matter, that we could start fresh." But his eyes darkened, and he stepped back like I'd slapped him. "Saloon girl," he spat, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. Gasps rippled through them, and a portly woman in a calico dress crossed herself, murmuring to her husband, "You think I'd hitch myself to some whiskey-pouring floozy? Folks here got standards. Missy, I ain't bringing shame to my name." Shame. The word hit me like a gut punch, stirring up memories I'd fought to bury. My cheeks burned, not just from the sun, but from the raw humiliation twisting in my gut. The crowd leaned in, hungry for more drama after the shootout. Old Sheriff Harlan, no relation to the stranger who'd saved me, as I'd later learn, watching from the sidelines with a tobacco-stained grin, and a wiry shopkeeper named Silas peeking from his store window. His wife Eliza, irony of names, that clucking her tongue. I wanted to crumble, to let the tears stinging my eyes fall, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Instead, I held up his letter, my hand shaking only a little, and read aloud, "Dearest Lily, your honesty touches me deep. The past is dust on the trail. What matters is the road ahead. Come to me, and we'll forge something real." My voice carried, clear and defiant, over the murmurs. "You call this real, Jedediah, or are you just another coward hiding behind pretty words?" He flushed red as a branding iron, sputtering, but the crowd's whispers turned, some eyes shifting to him now, questioning. The outlaws were gone, but the real danger felt like it was just beginning. The town's judgment, coiling around me like a noose. I turned on my heel, striding away through the smoldering square, my boots kicking up dust, leaving Jedediah standing there like a fool. But inside, my heart ached a mix of fury and sorrow. The fragile hope I'd clung to, shattering like glass underfoot. That hope had been born in the dim, smoke-filled haze of O'Brien's saloon back in Kansas City, where I'd spent the last 4 years of my life slinging drinks and singing to rowdy crowds just to keep a roof over our heads. I was 16 when Ma and Pa died in that cholera outbreak, leaving me and my little sister Eliza alone in a world that chewed up orphans and spat them out. Eliza was only 12, frail as a bird, with lungs that wheezed in the damp river air, and fevers that came and went like ghosts. I took the job at O'Brien's because it was the only one that paid enough pouring whiskey for gamblers and cowboys, belting out old folk tunes like Shenandoah or Oh Susanna to keep them buying rounds. The men leered, some groped, but I learned quick to dodge and smile through gritted teeth. "You're a natural, Lily," old man O'Brien would say, his breath reeking of tobacco. "Those emerald eyes of yours could charm the devil himself." But it wasn't charm, it was survival. Every coin tossed my way went to medicines for Eliza, to broth when she was too weak to eat, to the tiny room we shared above the butcher's. One stormy night, after a brawl that left the saloon floor slick with blood and broken glass, I dragged myself home, my fiddle case under my arm. I'd play it sometimes for extra tips. The rain pounded the streets, turning them to mud rivers, and I found our door ajar. Eliza was gone bed empty, her shawl missing. No note, no sign of struggle, just vanished into the night. I searched for days, begging the police, questioning drifters, but in a city like that, girls disappeared all the time. Presumed dead, they said, or were sold off or run away. The grief hollowed me out, left me numb, staring at the mirror and seeing a stranger with haunted eyes. That's when I found Jedediah's ad, crumpled in the saloon's trash bin, a Frontier Gazette someone had left behind. Seeking sturdy woman for matrimony. Isolated ranch needs a partner's hand. Past forgiven if heart is true. It was a spark in the darkness, a chance to leave the vice and memories behind. I wrote him that very night, candle flickering, pouring out my truths, the saloon, the hard choices, my unyielding spirit. His replies came like bomb-warm, assuring, "Yesterdays are gone, Lily. Let's build tomorrows." I sold my fiddle for the stagecoach fare, packed my valise with a spare dress, a comb, and Eliza's old locket for luck. The journey was peril itself. 2 days out, bandits hit the coach-roof men on horseback, demanding valuables. One grabbed for me, his fingers digging into my arm, breath hot and foul. "What's a pretty thing like you got hidden?" he snarled. Panic surged, but I remembered the derringer I'd tucked in my Buddha gift from a kind patron back at O'Brien's. I yanked it free, pressed it to his gut, and fired. The shot echoed, he crumpled, and the others scattered. As the driver whipped the horses, I arrived in Dusty Hollow, battered, bruised, but unbroken, only to face Jedediah's betrayal. As the smoke cleared in the square, I felt eyes on me still. The stranger who'd gunned down the outlaw approached, holstering his Colt with a practiced ease. He was tall, broader than Jedediah, with a brooding face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, eyes like storm clouds over the prairie. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and steady, tipping his hat. That was some entrance. "You all right?" I nodded, though my knees wanted to buckle. "Barely. Name's Lily Harper. Wyatt Harlan," he replied, glancing at the retreating crowd. Sheriff Harlan no kin, but the name raised brows around town was barking orders to deputies, while Silas the shopkeeper helped a wounded man. Wyatt's gaze softened, just a flicker. "Saw what happened with Thorne. Man's a fool. If you need a place to hole up, my spread's 10 miles out. No expectations, just a roof till you sort things." Suspicion warred with desperation in my chest. Men didn't offer kindness without a price. I'd learned that the hard way, but his eyes held no leer, only a quiet empathy, like he'd known loss himself. Memories of his own sister, I'd learn later, dead young from frontier fever. "Why?" I asked, voice wary. "Because no one deserves to be left in the dust like that," he said simply. Thunder rumbled in the distance, dark clouds rolling in like an omen. I glanced back at Jedediah, who was already turning away, and nodded. "All right then." We rode out on his spare horse, a sturdy bay named Rusty, the tension thick as gunpowder. Unspoken questions hung between us, the who, the why, the what next. My mind raced with doubts. Was this another trap? But as the town faded behind us, the vast prairie opening up, a strange calm settled. Wyatt didn't pry, just pointed out landmarks: a twisted oak, struck by lightning, a creek bed dry as bone. His homestead was rugged beauty, a sturdy cabin of weathered logs nestled amid thorny scrub and rolling hills, cattle lowing in the distance under endless skies. It wrapped around me like a warm blanket, hinting at peace I'd forgotten existed. Inside, it smelled of pine and coffee, simple but clean. "Guest room's yours," Wyatt said, stoking the stove. "Help yourself to whatever." That first night, I lay awake, valise clutched like a shield, replaying the day's chaos. The gunfire's echo, Jedediah's scorn, Wyatt's unexpected mercy, they swirled in my mind, stirring a whirlwind of emotions. Fear of the unknown, anger at betrayal, a tentative spark of gratitude. What was I doing here, in a stranger's home? But exhaustion won, pulling me into fitful sleep. Days blurred into a rhythm. Wyatt rose with the dawn, tending cattle, his subtle gestures speaking louder than words, fixing the leaky porch so rain wouldn't drip on my window, brewing extra coffee and leaving it steaming on the table, stacking kindling by the hearth without a word. It was kindness without strings, a rarity that chipped at my walls. I refused to be idle, patching his ripped chaps with needle and thread from my valise, scrubbing the hearth till it gleamed, even roping a stray calf one afternoon when it wandered near the cabin. My hands blistered, but it felt good, proving my worth. "You don't have to," Wyatt said once, watching me with those storm cloud eyes. "I know," I replied, meeting his gaze, "but I want to." Gossip ignited fast in Dusty Hollow. On a supply run, I overheard it. Storekeepers sneering, that saloon gal shacking up with Harlan. Tarnished goods, if you ask me. Churchgoers clutched pearls, whispering about sin. Silas's wife, a pinch-faced woman named Mabel, gave me the cold shoulder at the general store, her eyes raking over me like I was dirt. Then came the first real danger. One moonless night, rustlers hit the herd, shadowy figures cutting fences, driving cattle away. Wyatt bolted awake, grabbing his rifle. "Stay inside," he growled, but I snatched the spare from the wall. Heart racing, like hell, I shot back. We fired into the dark, shots echoing like cracks of doom. One rustler charged, his horse thundering. I aimed steady, the Derringer memory guiding my hand, and dropped him from the saddle. Wyatt took down another, his movements precise, masculine power in every line. As the rest fled, we stood panting, adrenaline bonding us in the rush. "You handle yourself well," he said, a hint of respect in his voice. Back in town days later, the whispers turned ugly. A drunksome no account, named Buckspat, slurs at me outside the saloon. "Whore from the city, think you're fit for decent folk." Wyatt was there in a flash, pinning him against the wall, fist cocked. "You watch your mouth, or I'll shut it permanent," he growled, voice like thunder. The onlookers fell silent, Sheriff Harlan chuckling from afar but not intervening. That night, over flickering lamplight, sorrows spilled. Wyatt confessed, voice cracking. His fiancée and unborn child lost to a prairie fire years back, the flames haunting his dreams. It mirrored my pain. Eliza's vanishing, the emptiness left behind. Tears pricked my eyes. We shared the weight, two broken souls finding echo in each other. Ties deepened under starlit skies, hands brushing during fencemen's. My hummed melodies softening his guarded edges. One evening, I pulled out the mandolin from my valise's secret-eyed kept hands strummed, sad frontier ballads, voice-weaving tales of lost love and open ranges. Wyatt drew closer, eyes reflecting forgotten warmth, the music bridging our silences. He left wild honey by my bedside next morn, a silent nod to sweetness amid bitterness. It pulled us nearer, hearts tentative but thawing. Winter's onslaught came fierce, blizzards blanketing the land, forcing us indoors where fires crackled and secrets thawed like ice on a pane. Doubts whispered in my mind, my role here, fearing my past poisoned this budding thing. "What am I to you?" I asked one night, vulnerability raw. Wyatt's eyes met mine, intense. "My haven from the storms," he murmured, leaning in. His kiss ignited like spark in dry grass ender, promising more. A confession of feelings long buried. As snow howled outside, emotions swirled. Fear, hope, desire. What lay ahead? The town's scorn, more dangers, But in that moment, with Wyatt's arms around me, I dared to believe in tomorrows again. I remember the kiss lingering on my lips, like the aftertaste of sweet mesquite honey, warm and promising, even as the blizzard howled outside the cabin like a pack of wolves denied their prey. Wyatt pulled back slowly, his calloused hands framing my face, those storm-cloud eyes searching mine for any sign of regret. There was none, only a flutter in my chest, a mix of fear and something deeper, something I'd thought buried forever under layers of saloon smoke and survival grit. "Lily," he murmured, voice rough as gravel under boot heels. "I ain't good with words, but you're the light cutting through my dark." My heart raced, torn between the pull of his touch and the shadows creeping in from the edges of my mind. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the log walls. But outside, the snow piled higher, blanketing the prairie in a white shroud that muffled the world. We'd been snowed in for days now, the winter's onslaught fiercer than any I'd known back in Kansas City, where cold meant damp alleys and shivering in threadbare shawls. Here, it was a living thing, clawing at the door, forcing us closer, sharing meals by lantern light, our conversations stretching into the night like unfurling ropes.